Hi, this video is just for Mrs. Brand's third grade. I'm going to read one chapter of Wish by Barbara O'Connor to get you caught up to where Miss Terwilliger's class is. And then next week, I'm going to read the ending of the book for both classes. The next day after Bible school, Wishbone and I were sitting out front while Gus worked in the garden. Tiny wrens and sparrows hopped from the yard and fluttered to the bird feeder on the fence post. After a while, Bertha came out with a couple of cats trailing along behind her. She smelled like lavender, and I couldn't help but notice how much she looked like my mama, with her hair curling around her face and her eyes crinkled up at the edges. I figured she was going to tell me a story about some lady in her knitting group or something, but she said, "I found that note." My stomach squeezed up, and I felt kind of scared for a minute. "That note in your lunchbox," she said. Well, what in the world could I say now? I felt like a big dumb baby for writing that note. I wanted Bertha to go away. I did not want to talk about that note. But Bertha did not go away. She sat petting the cat in her lap and gazing out at Gus weeding the garden. And then she said, "You know, Charlie, me and Gus always wanted children." She rubbed Wishbone's belly with her bare foot. "We've had many blessings in our life together, but having children has not been one of them. So, I watched her foot rubbing Wishbone, and I waited. "Well," she said, "I guess I'm just not too good at doing things that mothers do." My heart sank, and I scrambled to think of something to say, but I couldn't. "When I saw that note, I wanted to kick myself," she went on. "How come I didn't think of that a little girl would love to have a note like that in her lunchbox? I wish like anything I'd have thought to do that, but I didn't. Just like I didn't know how silly that rainbow lunchbox was." And then there was her hand on my knee, and it was dark and tan from the hours in the sun, and her fingernails were dirty from pulling weeds in the garden. "So I hope you'll be patient with me while I learn," she said. I hung my head and I nodded. I should have said something nice to her. I should have said, "Oh, don't even worry about it. That rainbow lunchbox is no big deal." I should have said, "I don't even care about that dumb note." But the truth was, all I could do was sit there feeling her warm hand and breathing her lavender smell. "Let's go help Gus," she said. So the three of us pulled weeds and picked beans and pinched dead flowers off of marigolds, and Wishbone sat outside the gate and whined to get in, but he wasn't allowed because of his digging. When we were done, we climbed into Gus's car, and we picked up Howard before heading down the mountain to get ice cream. Wishbone stuck his head out the window. His ears flapped like crazy in the wind while me and Howard sang Bible school songs. Every once in a while, we passed a clearing with a view of the mountains stretched out as far as you could see. A smoky blue haze floated over the treetops, and it reminded me of my first day in Colby when Gus had told me why these were called the Blue Ridge Mountains. Sometimes it felt like just yesterday that I'd sat in that school bus with all those kids I didn't know riding into this town and thinking every laundromat and trailer park and shabby little house along the way was the sorriest thing I ever saw. But now I was singing Bible school songs with my friend Howard, and my arms were wrapped around my very own dog. And when I looked out at the now familiar sights of Colby, I realized they didn't look quite so sorry anymore. Bertha chatted away in the front seat the whole way to town, while Gus nodded silently. We got our ice cream at the Dairy Freeze, and we sat at a picnic table trying to eat it quick before the summer heat made it run down our cones and drip into our laps. Bertha scooped up a little bit into a paper cup for Wishbone, and Howard let him have the last bite of his cone. On the way home, me and Howard taught Gus and Bertha some of our Bible school songs, and then the best thing happened. I saw a yellow railroad car. That was on my list of things you could wish on, thanks to Fulton Banner, a crazy old man who lived next door to us in Raleigh. "Yellow railroad cars aren't too plentiful," he told me. "When you see one, make a wish." For a minute, I thought I might not even bother making my wish. Maybe I was just wasting my time, but then something inside of me told me not to give up and to keep on trying. I mean, you never know, right? So I looked back at that yellow railroad car as we passed by it, and I made my wish. All right, next week I will start with chapter 28, and we will read through the end of the book for Mrs. Brand's third grade and for Mrs. Terwilliger's third grade.